Welcome to our virtual event series that is jointly sponsored tonight by Alliance Française de Milwaukee. And just to be sure, I am not a native French speaker and everything I pronounce is officially wrong. I did want to mention this is day 4,149 of Boswell Being in Business. Cara Black for her breakout standalone historical thriller, 3 Hours in Paris. For this event, we are in, Cara will be in conversation with Erin Lewenauer, who is the event's membership and marketing manager at Alliance Française de Milwaukee. We have shared many a drink over the years, and now you can pretend, I hope you have your drinks in front of you, and you can all go out for wine and coffee with Erin and Cara. Thank you so much, both of you. Take it away. Give them a big hand. I'm doing my little hand thing now. Yay.
Well, welcome.
Turn that down. Hi, Erin.
Hi.
I'm sorry, there's noise in the background. Bonsoir.
So, do you want to start by telling us your a summary of the book and do a little reading if you'd like?
Sure. So, 3 Hours in Paris is set in June 1940, 2 weeks into the German occupation of Paris. And Kate Reese is a young American markswoman who has been recruited by British intelligence to drop into Paris with the dangerous assignment to assassinate the Führer. Spoiler alert, Hitler lives. Okay.
I heard you say in another interview that every American has a Paris, and that stuck with me. So what would you say is your Paris?
Right, yeah. Because every time especially when I'm at Boswell's and, we have people, everyone is, talking about their Paris, or they went there in their junior year abroad, or they had their honeymoon there, or they were a foreign exchange student, or, whatever, you go with the Alliance Française. And so I guess mine comes from my first visit many years ago, when I was really lucky to meet the writer Romain Gary, who won the Prix Goncourt, not once, but twice, right? And you're only supposed to win it once. And, I had written him a fan letter, as a teenager, and I was so thrilled. But it was this kind of a chance meeting when he answered the door and didn't know what to do with me and said, let's go to a cafe. And we walked in and there was a cigar and espresso waiting for me, my first, and talking with this Prix Goncourt winning author. And I guess maybe I thought, oh, this is Paris, right? I'm a writer and what? Not real, not for me anyway. But it was lovely to really, I've seen it, I've gone so many other times and stayed there and experienced, but it was so lovely, the first visit, meeting a writer in the left bank on Rue de Bac, right around the corner from, I think Gallimard is very close, his publishing. And you just walk over to his publishers, and it's so it really had some literary chops to that visit, I think.
You tend to write about characters who are outsiders to some degree. Is this related to your experience traveling to other countries, or is there some other reason?
For outsiders, that's a really great observation, because I'm always an outsider when I go to Paris or when I travel, because I'm American, but I feel very familiar. I can sort of talk. I have friends. I feel familiar, but I'm not French, and I think that's actually great for a writer. If you're writing about that place, you're an outsider and you notice things that probably someone who lived there wouldn't notice. And of course, the detective, Aimée, is an outsider too, because she's half French, half American. So, yeah.
And your latest character as well, because she's from Ranch in Oregon, right? So that struck me. Is there, you spend a lot of time in Paris, and this book seemed like it required a lot of research. Do you have a typical research process, or was it different for this book versus the Aimée series?
That's really an interesting question, because over the years of writing the Aimée Leduc books, I was always just researching, right? I would go to the archives at Chateau de Vincennes, which were incredible, actually, looking for things, not knowing what I was looking for, but being curious. And a lot of things about World War II that had been declassified were now becoming open, right? We could read them. And also in the UK, out at Kew, the British archives, war archives, some of them had just been declassified. So I've always had this, interest in World War II very, very much. And so I was always collecting information. Sometimes that would go in the Aimée Leduc book, because Aimée would be in that part of Paris where this person had lived, or this event happened, but a lot of things didn't fit. And my editor, when we were talking, they really, Soho Press, really encouraged me to write a standalone. And she said, you obviously, and World War II, I'm sure you notice, Erin, when you go to Paris, it's still prevalent. I mean, it's not those people, granted, they're in their 90s, but it's still there. So you see the bullet holes, you talk to people. So I had all this information that didn't go in the Aimée books. And my editor said, you should think about how you could use that. And I really did. And so my research was culled from many of these things, especially 3 years ago, when I was always kind of putting this story together, when the department at Kew in the UK declassified information about Section D, which is the precursor to SOE, Special Operations Executive, that Churchill, gave the mission to set Europe ablaze with sabotage. And so, but this is the precursor, and it really existed. And it was full of misfits, creatives, people who didn't fit in a box, foreigners who they used to kind of throw them out there to create havoc, and totally deniable. And that fascinated me. And also in the UK, there's only, and we have some of the archives in DC, that of all 100%, only 15% of the archives of papers of SOE and Section D survived. 85% is destroyed, burnt, lost in a fire. Quote, I'm using quote marks, right? Okay, whatever that means. There was people. So there is this huge information, and things are coming out. So I just wanted to use that. But it was when I was reading this history book about Hitler and his trip to Paris, because he came one time for 3 hours. He left, never to return. And I looked at that footnote right at the bottom and I said, but why only 3 hours? And then it was like, he could have had a big victory parade down the Champs-Élysées, right? I mean, what was that about? And that was, I was just obsessed. I knew I had to explore that because it didn't make sense. On top of that, when I was exploring it, and people can go on YouTube and watch Hitler's journey through Paris, it's there, carefully edited and cut by Prime Minister Goebbels. Anyway, you think about it, and then after he had his people with him. One of them was Arno Breker, his sculptor, and the other was Albert Speer, famous for the architect of the Reich. Both men are with him. They're on either side in the Eiffel Towers in the background. After they both survived the war and they lived a long time. Speer wrote his memoirs or accounting, and he gave the date as April 26 something, and Arno Breker gave it as April 24th, which is much more than commonly accepted by historians. And I was like, wait a minute, and they knew each other. Both of these men were with him. They wrote and gave it 2 different dates. something happened, and what if someone took a shot at him and there was damage control and we never see. So I was obsessed with that because I think it's really plausible. I think there's something fishy happened. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's a really interesting kernel to start with, and to follow the what ifs or the why. Is that usual for you, or as far as your writing process, do you usually start with a smaller story like that, or is it more a character or a plot, or how does it usually begin?
Well, it can be all of those. Every book, Aimée book, is different. But usually with Aimée, it comes from the place. Which arrondissement is she going to be investigating? Why would she be there? What business, what personal connection, what is it like? Who lives there? What is she going to be doing there? And what kind of crime happens here? Not that crime can't happen anywhere, but so it's kind of organically. And then it comes from, could be something in the newspaper, something when I take the flics, the cops out to lunch. And I, sometimes I'll say, well, didn't you used to work in this around you? Yeah, when I was at Ricky, yeah, tell me about it. And he actually, for Murder in Saint-Germain, he told me all about these things that I got to use in the story. What it's like being a cop on the street and what the place is like, and whether you use those crimes or they're a filter for something else. There's always a great story. Someone tells me a story about what their family that lived on a street, or an issue that has come up, a social issue that I really feel is important. It affected me. Maybe I saw something and I'd like to deal with that. Okay, and here's how truth is stranger than fiction. Okay, if you read the Guardian newspaper, you Google the mummified body found after 30 years in a mansion that was just sold. Did you read that, Erin?
No.
It was in the paper yesterday. Okay, it's in this mansion that was sold for millions of dollars, and they've gone in to do the work. And it's the bodies, they discovered this body, the workers did. They found his name or whatever. The point being that a scene in my story takes place across the street. This is murder in the Champ de Mars. So Aimée is going to investigate a man literally in the clinic right across the street of this building, which I had photographed because I said it's a really bizarre building. It's empty, but it's in this incredible place near Yves Saint Laurent's old house, and the president's place, and the convent, and the church. So, and it was like, oh my God, I could have used that. It was like literally right there. I just did a blog post on it because it was so amazing. So truth can be stranger than fiction, but it's also, so it's about what would have happened there. And it's of course, it's about her character, where she is in her life as well. Now she has a baby, and so her baby is growing, and so that's one of the things in the series that you get to work with and play with. I don't know if you ever read series, but sometimes I read certain series because I just like those characters and I want to go and live in that world. I know they're not going to be, I don't want them static and ever changing, but I want those people, my friends, to visit with in a book. And then of course something new will happen. It will be fresh and I'll see another side of them or whatever. But I think that's the appeal of, or that's why I enjoy series. I don't, how do you read series or?
I have a lot of young adults, and I would say that definitely that's what carries through and what makes that age group or adults very attached and curious, especially if they're released slowly. It really builds an audience. And I was wondering too about your books have such great texture and atmosphere, and you said creating that's very important to you. How do you go about that? Is a lot of it from, as you said, sitting in cafes in Paris watching, or?
Sure, a lot of it is, and I again, whatever I feel there, I need to come back here in this little room and recreate it. So I tape, I record on my phone. I even like on the bus sometimes I'll be like, I'm sorry, and I'm actually recording a conversation of a couple behind, and I hope I don't get in trouble, but it's just the cadence. It's the way they talk. If it's an older person, like a grandfather with it's sometimes just interesting because I'm trying to dialogue is so important in a story. And how do you capture, recreate, or get something that they would, because you can't remember everything. When I sit in a cafe and then they start juicing the oranges in the morning, right? There's that wonderful smell, citrus smell, and the noise. And the guy's coming in with the cart, bringing in the wine delivery, and they're chatting, and they're, someone else is smoking or going outside to smoke, or, it's like recreating something and thinking a lot about it, what it would be like. Why is she there? Is she in a hurry? Is she, it's kind of weaving that, because I really want to put you on that street with her in Paris, whether it's with Kate escaping Nazis, or Aimée, hopping on her scooter with the dog. I mean, it's about taking us there, which I think is really important. In the book, 3 Hours in Paris, you see the map, and it literally, those are I went to every one of those places. I either biked there, walked there, drove in a car there, took the bus there, metro. It's all doable, and I did go to every one of those places. A lot of them look the same, some don't, of course, but I could look at photos, and I think that's really, I love maps, because I think you could just hop on there and start walking, and you could go there and you can see the corset shop that is still there. Wow. And they don't sell corsets anymore, but the incredible Art Nouveau. I mean, you see it from the bus. It's amazing. And that's incredible. I saw it on the bus. I got off. This has to go in the story. I just don't know. But
so what is your favorite part of Paris? Is it still the Ile Saint Louis you've mentioned before, or does it change?
I always love Ile Saint Louis because I would like to live in Aimée Leduc's apartment. I just really would. But I kind of fall in love with each arrondissement when I'm writing about it. Not at first. At first, sometimes I'm like, I don't know about this place. I don't know. And Aimée would have I have an attitude, so Amy's having an attitude. And then it's kind of like, well, this is cool, or this is special, or I haven't seen that before, or this has some rhythm to it. And the next story is set in the 15th arrondissement, which is almost, well, the 12th arrondissement is the biggest in Paris. This is the second biggest arrondissement. Huge, right? It has the population of Bordeaux. So it's big, and it's got different parts, and maybe you're familiar with it. I wasn't. I was like, wow, where there's no real monuments until you really start scratching. It's this and that. It's different, very residential, and so I found incredible things, but it took me a while. It had to grow on me. I had to spend a lot of time there. I had to see things. I had to, again, it's all about scratching, right? Have you ever stayed in the 15th? Do you know it?
Not really. Not well. But it is, I mean, Paris is very walkable, but there's so much in every corner of it. You're running out of arrondissements? Do you think about creating crime in different cities in France or in other countries?
Well, there's always, yeah, I'm thinking Marseille. There's crime in Marseille. I don't know, Lyon, good food. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely, Lyon. I've been to Lyon very short time, and I really have to go back. I think it's very intriguing, and it's so close to Paris, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I have lots of questions, but I don't want to take over the whole hour. So my last one is, which authors do you reread, or what are you reading now?
Authors I reread, French authors I reread, Marguerite Duras. Love her, yeah, love her stuff, and The Lover. I read every so often, I'll read Georges Simenon, Inspector Maigret. He's so good. I mean, of course, it's another time, it's a different era, it's things are different, but I just, sometimes I'm in the mood for Maigret. You know, it's kind of that way. I just finished an incredible nonfiction story called The Rat Line by Philippe Sanz. He is an English lawyer, barrister, whatever, you know, those, whatever those are. And, but he works in, he teaches at the University of London. I don't have the name right, whatever, the College of London. And he's a lawyer who works on cases about genocide and crimes against humanity. And so he's become friends. So anyway, it's an amazing story. You should look him up. And the book is coming out in the US, I think next year, Daniel. It's amazing because he is journeying, because he's from a Jewish background and his grandfather's family were, of course, wiped out in Poland. But he goes on a journey with the son of the German commandant who was responsible. And they have this intriguing conversations and back and forth, and they even made a document. It's quite amazing, you know, the two of them, and another son of a Nazi, who, it's just fascinating that the sons are looking back and coming to terms or not coming to terms with what happened, and this thing about crimes against humanity, which he specializes in. So I don't know if I gave a succinct description, but it's really kind of fascinating. So that kind of nonfiction, it feels like a novel.
Great. Well, Daniel, did you want to open it up to questions or?
Sure. I have a few from chat and a few from email. The first question was from Cheryl Muller, I'm going to generalize it a little, because she said, where is the first place you go in Paris, which was, you know, we were talking about El Saint Louis, your favorite place, and where is Aimée's favorite? And that got me thinking, what do you consider? You said, well, I feel this way, so Aimée feels this way. How do you feel that you and Aimée are alike, and how do you feel that you're different? And you can incorporate favorite places into that answer.
Right. Well, I think Aimée would always go home to Ile Saint Louis when she gets off the train, you know, because that's home. I go there usually a day or two after I arrive. I go to the Place des Vosges and Aimée's house just de rigueur, but it's not always the day I land. The day I land, I go stay with my friend who lives in Montmartre. So I get off, you know, the bus at the Place de l'Opéra, and I hop on another bus and I go to her place. And so what was the next part of the question? Oh, yeah, so Aimée goes home, I go to Montmartre, yeah, then I go to Aimée's house. Many times I go window shopping with Aimée Leduc because we're looking for her outfits, you know, or I'll see something, I'll go, and it'll be like, she'd like, no, this one. And I'm like, and I'm sure people are looking at me like, what's that woman's thing, you know? But I can pretend I'm talking on the phone these days, right? You know, but, or I'll be looking, I'll go, I need to go by the Louboutin shop and see what Aimée could be wearing. I love that's my virtual shoe shopping, because she could wear this or not that. So we come up with an outfit. I think it's the time of the season, you know, and Aimée does a lot of things I would never do, which is kind of fun. So I wouldn't do it, but I think this is what she would do, and this is how she would climb that fence. Sometimes I do the physical details myself. I will climb things, I will hide, I will sneak in, you know, and if anybody ever asks me, I'll say, what happens at Boswell stays at Boswell's, okay? I've impersonated reporters, so, from major newspapers.
I got a request for you to repeat the title and author of the book that you were talking about, the nonfiction book. Do you know what the English title is? The English title done, or is it?
I believe it's The Rat Line.
The Rat Line.
Rat Line, not Stuart Neville's book.
Right. Yeah. That was, I think, Rat Lines, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. You're talking by Philippe Sanz, Sands. It's only in the UK. It's coming here. He wrote a story before that, which I'm reading. I read backwards. It's called East West Street, where he also talks about his grandfather and the whole notion of he went there and it's because of crimes against humanity and genocide, and what does that mean, and how he's called to the international courts all the time. So that's, I think, East West Street. Is that it? East West Stories by Philippe Sanz. That's out. That's out now.
East West Street. So, and just so people don't laugh at hysterically at my spelling, is Philippe Philippe? Would that be the way you'd spell it? Oh,
yes.
That was exhausting. Well, all right, I'm sending that out. And then I wanted to say that it was very interesting to me to hear about the book too. I do have, you know, I'm Jewish and my family's from Eastern Europe, but my mother's cousin actually did settle in France. So I have a whole branch of the family there.
Oh.
I've only been to France once. Did I see any of my cousins? I did not. I spent my whole time going to department stores, so that's my little print home thing that I just happened to dig out from 30 years ago. That's not a question, but here's a question. Are you working on another standalone? Because you like this one so much.
You know, I've been strongly encouraged to, yeah. So I've sort of dipping the toe in. Yep, dipping the toe in.
Well, I mean, you've got to figure that I just have to read a couple of these reviews out loud, so people are encouraged to buy the book if they haven't yet. Maureen Corrigan, that Washington Post review is spectacular. Heart racing. This isn't a formulaic get-out tale. It's Mystery Masters Cara Black's first standalone, a spy story set during World War II in occupied Paris. Chances, what are the chances of success for the sharpshooter? Slim to none. Chances that you'll be able to put Black's thriller down once you've picked it up, also slim to none. Amazing Los Angeles Times review, Financial Times review, Tom Nolan in the Wall Street Journal compared it to Day of the Jackal and Eye of the Needle. I mean, come on, the masters. I mean, you're also a master, but it's also still nice to be compared.
Yeah, I love Day of the Jackal. Yeah, I love that book. But I wanted to write an American woman. I wanted to write an every woman, so to speak. I wanted her to be, you know, she's someone's sister, there's someone's daughter, a mother, a wife. I wanted her put there, I wanted us to see something, excuse me, you know, of us in them. I wanted to just give her lots of trouble. And I was inspired by, there were Russian female snipers in World War II, a huge regiment. And I was like, well, wait a minute, we're American, why couldn't we have female snipers? And the Ludmilla, this famous Russian sniper, actually in 1942 or 43, came to the White House and was given a tour by Eleanor Roosevelt, taken on parades, you know, throughout the country about some of the war effort. And I was like, well, then we should have got on the ball right away, you know. But why is it, and I love spy fiction, I love the John le Carré, the Ken Follett, the, you know, all of them, Eric, the original thriller writer, Eric, I'll think of it. Anyway, all these books that were in my bookcase at home when I grew up, my father's books, thumbed, and the ones I read, and I loved those. I loved the spy movies. I liked that. And you know, but there were never any women. Why is the legacy of World War II, not that men didn't fight, but why are women forgotten? Women did so many things during the war, whether they worked in factories and made armaments, whether they stayed home and managed children, which is not, you know, you can all see that's a job, whether they were, whatever they were doing, they kept home, they didn't keep the home fires going, they did more than just that, if you can say that. Why are they forgotten? Why is the legacy always of male sharpshooters? You know, so I felt it was really time. that Kate Reeves got in the picture, and goes and does something that she had the skills for. She's kind of an every woman who has special skills. She can shoot. She grew up on ranches in Oregon, a real hard scrabble life during the Depression. She had to shoot because she grew up with 5 brothers. Now, if you don't know how to handle yourself after that, 5 brothers, but there's a resiliency because she had to make do. She had to go shoot, for food. She had to shoot when they came to attack the ranches. That was just what she learned. So that was part of her, which I thought was really interesting. What's part of Aimée Leduc that makes her that way is her curiosity too, in a different way. Kate can take care of things. She can fall down and stand back up again. You have to, or you don't. And so I think that prepared her.
We had, let's see, Roxanne said that she really loves the character Gunther, the antagonist. Could you talk a little about that? So,
yeah, thank you. I'm glad you do. He's an homage to Bernie Gunther, Philip Kerr's famous book. Yes. Love those books. So it's my little homage. He's not Bernie, he's Gunther. He's different. But I think what I so appreciate or so got from Philip Kerr's books, the humanity, and I wanted Gunther not to be the stereotypical Nazi, the trope, that I wanted him to be a human being who was on the other side, a complex character, someone who was, probably who didn't like his Fuhrer, but he had a deadline. He had a family at home that would, suffer, and he also had a moral compass. Okay, he was a Nazi, he was German, but he had a moral compass because he was trained as a policeman, and that's how he approached this. Police, you have evidence, you make the things fit, this is correct, there's, proof, and law is served. And that's where he came from. If you remember in Day of the Jackal, remember they're trying to find out who's going to be the assassin of de Gaulle. We all know de Gaulle lives, but it's still heart-pounding. And who do they finally get? They hire the police detective because he can find people, he can figure it out, he will find the jackal because all these other, so, Gunther is a policeman and he's brought in. There were many, many attempts on Hitler's life. It's amazing that he survived all of these. But I really wanted Gunther to be smart. And he very smart, very sharp, but his life and his family depended on it. And I wanted him to have a respect for her as well when he saw how tough it was. Well, I can't say any more, right, about that because maybe people haven't read the book.
We're going to start a series called the Spoiler Friendly Series. It'll be for paperbacks where you have to just make the promise that you don't care. You read the book ahead of time or you don't care just because, hey, we can do something like that. It's, it's all virtual. But so then people don't go, oh. Tom asked you why you wound up setting the Aimée Leduc books in the 80s and 90s instead of either more historical or closer to today, like contemporary. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, you've heard me say this. Well, I started writing them in the early 90s. So I was sort of writing what I was seeing and experiencing, and everywhere was like that. So I just wrote what I saw. I went down, to my friend's place, and I wrote Murder in the Marais because she was staying there and in Belleville. And so I kind of wrote it. And of course, it took a few years to get published. So, but in those, let's see, when did Marais come out? 99, 98? So it was just a few years, it was still, we hadn't crossed into Google. We had no Facebook. They had cell phones, but they were texting. You know what I mean? They were not, like today. The world was different. The internet wasn't like this. Sure, it existed, but so that's where I started, and I just kept going. So a lot of it took a few years to people kind of, say, wait a minute, why do they still have dial-up? Stuff like that. So I just kept progressing because I wrote a book at a time. I never knew if they would buy the next book too. So that's what I knew. I liked writing the prequel set in '89 because that was very special because we got to meet Aimée Leduc's father in person. You know, we really got to see this man who's, you know, been so important in her life to pivotal, you know, see what happened. And we met her grandfather who I just fell in love with, right? Claude. Everyone wants me to write a story about Claude. I'm like, yeah, he's like the perfect grandfather, right?
Somebody, that's funny because Judy Ruck said perfect standalone would be to include a grandpère. Does she mean yours or does she mean Amy's? Judy, you can comment on this. Probably Amy's, you think?
Yeah, Amy's. Sorry, I identified. Yeah, Claude Leduc, Amy's grandfather, who started Leduc Detective, who'd been in the Sûreté, who was in Murder in the K, and yeah, bon vivant. He had a mistress. He cooked. He wanted Amy to follow her heart. You know, she didn't want to be a doctor. You know, a wonderful grandfather. So,
have you thought about writing a book focusing on him?
Maybe short story.
Okay.
I mean, if I wrote a book with him, yeah, I mean, it could be, yeah, sure. It would be like 70s or 50s or 60s. Yeah, it would definitely hinge on that back burner time. But maybe a little short story. I don't know.
I'm sure there's always somebody asking you for an anthology or something like that. So when somebody does the grandparent anthology, you know, you'll have something to go with. Do you have any last questions? Erin, would you like to mention?
I could do one more. It's just growing up. Did you always imagine you were going to be a writer?
I was a reader, always a reader. My dad was a huge reader. I mean, we were readers. And I don't, you know, I always thought, I can't write, you know, but I had to wait till I had a story to say, you know, to tell. It's about the story, you know. And I think because I wrote it when I was older, when I had life experience, when I'd had a child, when I just, everything just kind of came together, and it was that my first book. And that's kind of how I felt writing this story, 3 Hours in Paris, because it was very different, right? It was like it's like going back and I have a new person, I have a new thing to say. And I was just really passionate to tell this story about what could have happened that I don't know. I mean, I didn't have a little, you know, I never wrote little stories when I was young. I was just always reading. So I'm very, you know, I think to be a writer, I think you have to put in some chops before you can say that. I mean, to me, I mean, I heard people say, I didn't call myself till I was a writer or author till I was, you know, 13 books in. I didn't, you know, quit my day job. And, you know, I always have that fear. Yeah, they're going to, you know, find out or it won't have work anymore or something. So I'm just so happy I get to write. Lucky, you know, right?
Is there anything else you would be if you weren't a writer? Private investigator or?
Sure. Actually, Leduc Detective, the woman who runs it, who I sort of based Aimée on, she's retired and is selling the detective agency. Of course, I don't have my French detective license, but it's so sad, you know, it's really sad. But she's done it for 50 years, so she gets a break, right? But yeah, but I was a preschool teacher before I started writing, so. Wow.
Were those maps of Paris on your door?
Yeah. This is a map. I don't know if you can see it. It's a German map for, you know, the troops. Paris sur plan, and it has really tiny writing, all the different, like, I'm sorry, I don't even have my glasses with me.
Oh, it's okay.
All the, you know, like a pair. Yeah, I had this. I was looking at this as I wrote. I have another map, you know, with where I'm writing now. I have a lot of things that you can't see. It's so messy, but many. I don't know if well, there I go. I can't show you, but yeah.
All right, a fitting end, and to make us all, you can't look at most of my house either, so there. This is carefully staged. I wanted to thank Alliance Française and Erin Lewenauer. Erin, do you have any other events coming up that you want people to know about that are still happening? Any virtual things?
I would say for now, just sign up for our newsletter on our website or keep an eye on our website. Things are a little bit in flux, but we should have, this week we have author Mark Greenside at 5 on Zoom.
Oh, right.
He writes I'll Never Be French and a couple other books. And in a couple weeks, Kitty Morse, who writes a lot about cooking. So we're
Very cool.
doing lots of Zoom as well.
Wonderful. And of course, you always have your language programs on Zoom
Yes,
as well.
and we have our fall session is starting September 14th. So
Yay!
registration will be open soon. So learn French.
Hooray!
Parlez français. Wait.
Books for sale on the Boswell website. Thank you from Alliance Française. Thank you from Boswell. Thanks to all of you for coming. We wouldn't have a virtual event series without you. And it would be bonsoir. What do I say now?
That's good.
À tout à l'heure. À tout à l'heure. Until next time.
Yeah.
À tout à l'heure. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Boswells, and thank you, Erin and the Alliance. Wonderful to see you.